Have you ever wondered where all the other parallel realities are? Ever wondered if they exist now, why can't I see them? Do you have trouble relying on this concept to trust in those big manifestations like the desired version of your specific person, the amount of money or success you truly desire to experience, or really any other unseen realities? Well, if you're like my client who asked me this very important question in our session the other day, that's what this video is going to answer. Today, I'm going to close that gap for you so you can stop wondering where all the parallel realities are with your stuff, and you can start using this powerful truth to help you in manifesting the unseen realities. I'm going to show you using dimensional science exactly why infinite parallel realities don't just possibly exist, but why they must exist. How the lower dimensions of 1D and 2D actually prove it, and why the fact that you can't see them is not evidence against them. It's actually the most important part of the evidence that proves them. By the end of this video, you won't be hoping parallel realities exist. You'll know it. And that knowing, real knowing, not intellectual agreement, okay, that sounds good, not that kind of knowing, but that in your bones certainty is the shift that changes everything about how you manifest. If you're new here, hello, I am your Muse Traci. On this channel, I help you unlock the power you already have but can't access. I help you break through where years of trying has failed. And the biggest hurdle of all, I help you go from intellectually knowing the law to permanently embodying it. I spent years being a good person who couldn't figure out why her life wasn't reflecting that, wondering where all my stuff was. When I finally discovered what was actually running the show, everything changed. And now I help people break the patterns keeping them stuck. And I help them start manifesting the love, the money, the joy, the success they have always known that they're meant for. So I was in a session the other day with a client who asked me, he said, okay, Traci, I get the concept of parallel realities. I understand that the version of my life I want already exists. I understand that manifestation is selection, not creation, but I have one problem I can't get past. Where are all these infinite parallel realities? Like physically, actually, where are they? Why can't I see them? How do I know they're there if I can't see them? And I looked at him and I said, I don't know where they are. I also don't know where they are, but I do know they exist. Now, before you click off, that's not a brush off answer. That answer is precisely part of the science, the dimensional science that I'm about to share with you. Because the fact that I don't know where they are, and more importantly, the fact that you also may be asking this and not coming up with an answer as to where they are, doesn't mean they don't exist. Okay, so let me explain. To really understand this, we need to go back a dimension or two. Bear with me here because this is exactly where everything clicks. So let's start with the simplest possible reality, a one-dimensional reality. So that dimension is a straight line. That's it. That's the entire universe for the beings that live in this one dimension. They can move left, they can move right? It's just a straight line. So they can move left, they can move right. And that's the full extent of their existence. There is no up, there is no down, there's no depth to the line. It's just a line. It's not a square yet, it's just a line. So now imagine you are that being. You lived on that line. You have always lived on that line. Everything you've ever experienced has happened on that line. Your entire concept of reality, of space, of movement, of existence is contained within that single line. You can't even comprehend having depth. That would be a square, by the way. You can't comprehend having depth. You definitely can't comprehend up and down. And, you don't know even how those things could exist. All you know, all you've ever known is left and right on this one line. So you can't even conceive of a second dimension. You can't imagine width. You can't picture what it would mean to move in a direction that doesn't exist anywhere in your entire experience of reality, right? And in this case, in the first dimension, it's just one line. It's literally outside the boundaries of your dimensional experience. You would have absolutely no frame of reference for the direction of depth. This is 1D space-time existence. Let's go up a dimension. The dimension has 2 dimensions. And I want to just, scientists have a name for this. They call it Flatland. So Flatland, just imagine like any kind of flat shape. It can be a square, it can be a circle, it can be a triangle, rectangle, whatever you want. This is a concept that has been explored in mathematics and physics for a long time. And Flatland, everything has, length and width, right? And the beings that live there can move in this length and width. They can move forward, they can move backward, they can move left, right, and, they can move in between as well. But it's completely flat, okay? There is no up. There is no down. The concept of height simply does not exist in flat land. It's flat, it's 2-dimensional, and the beings who live there cannot even conceive of it. Not won't. It's not a limitation of their willingness. They can't. They don't have a reference point. It is entirely outside their dimensional framework. They don't even understand where it would be. And here's something even more fascinating about how Flatland works. The beings there don't even perceive their 2-dimensional world in 2 dimensions. They perceive it in 1 dimension because their eyes are on the same flat plane as everything else. They see just lines, just edges, cross-sections of the shapes around them. Think about that. They live in 2D, but they can only perceive 1D. Now, and this is where it gets really important, a 2D reality is comprised of an infinite number of 1D realities, all stacked together, right? Think of what a square is. A square is comprised of an infinite number of lines side by side. 2D reality is comprised of an infinite number of 1D realities, all stacked together. All those infinite lines side by side make up the flat plane of Flatland. Okay, so now let's go up another dimension to 3D, the one that we inhabit. We have now length, width, and now we have height. 3 dimensions that we can function in. And just like the 2D was an infinite array of 1D realities stacked together, a 3D reality, our reality, is comprised of an infinite number of 2D realities stacked together. Every cross-section of the 3-dimensional world you're sitting in right now is a 2-dimensional plane, infinite planes stacked infinitely together to make up the 3-dimensional space you experience as reality. So perhaps you are seeing a pattern here. Because if that pattern holds, and mathematically, logically it does, then a 4D reality would be comprised of an infinite number of 3D realities, infinite versions of our existing 3-dimensional world, all existing simultaneously, all real, all present. And that is exactly what infinite parallel realities are. This is not science fiction, not spiritual fantasy, woo-woo, or unsubstantiated nonsense. The logical, mathematical, inevitable next step in the dimensional progression that our own 3-dimensional existence proves is real. So now that we have like the science-y understanding, explanation, let's go back to my client's question. Where are all those infinite parallel realities? And here's why I don't know is actually the most intellectually honest and most profound answer. Think about the being in Flatland. If someone told that being, hey, There's an entire dimension above you, a whole three-dimensional world stacked on top of your flat plane, and the flatland being asked, okay, but where is it? Show me. I want to see this. I want to see this, three-dimensional world that you're talking about. Could you point it out? Could you show them? Could you show the being in Flatland? So the answer is no, not in a way they could perceive it or comprehend it, because their entire sensory apparatus, their entire experience of reality is limited to two dimensions. The third dimension would be completely invisible to them, not absent, not fictional, just completely outside the reach of their perception. And we are those beings too. We are three-dimensional beings trying to perceive a four-dimensional reality. We can't point to where it is. We can't point to where the parallel realities are. We can't see them. We cannot physically locate them, not because they don't exist, but because our three-dimensional sensory apparatus has no mechanism for perceiving the fourth dimension, right? The beings in Flatland can't see up. We can't see the fourth dimension. The limitation is in the perceiver, not in the thing being perceived. And here's what makes this truly mind-bending. Just as the being in Flatland is literally surrounded by, embedded in a three-dimensional reality they can't perceive, we too are literally surrounded by and embedded in a four-dimensional reality that we can't perceive. The parallel realities aren't somewhere else. They aren't far away. They aren't in another universe that you have to travel to. They're right here, right now, coexisting with this moment, occupying the same space and the dimension we simply don't have the perceptual equipment to see. The reason you can't see them in this is the same reason the Flatland being can't see up. Not because they aren't there, because you're not built to perceive that dimension. And this is where it gets really interesting for manifestation. So what does this all mean about you and your manifestation? It means the version of your life you desire, the relationship, the money, the version of you who already has everything you've been working toward. That version isn't something you need to build from scratch. It isn't something you need to attract from somewhere far away. It already exists right now in the fourth dimensional plane that is coexisting with this very moment, in the dimension your three-dimensional perception can't see. Manifestation through this lens is not creation, right? This is what Neville taught. Creation is already finished. You're not creating anything. It is navigation. It is the movement between parallel realities that already exist, shifting which three-dimensional version of your life you are experiencing, not constructing a new one out of thin air from scratch. And the mechanism of that navigation, what moves you from one parallel reality to another, is not your physical action. It is your inner state of being, your assumptions, your frequency, your self-concept. Because here's the thing, if infinite parallel realities all exist simultaneously in the fourth dimension and you can't physically see or touch them, then the only way to select between them is through a non-physical mechanism, through consciousness, through your inner world. This is what Neville was pointing at. This is what there is no one to change but self actually means at the deepest level. It's not just psychology, it's dimensional mechanics. When you shift your assumption, when you change what you believe about yourself at the root level, you are literally tuning your consciousness to a different three-dimensional reality within the fourth dimensional field. You're not changing the reality that already exists. You're changing which one you're inhabiting. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need permission. You don't need to convince and change this three-dimensional reality. You select it through your assumptions, through your consciousness. This idea that creation is finished completely changed the way I relate to my manifestation work. I stopped thinking about what I needed to do or become to earn the reality that I wanted. And I started thinking about it as that reality already exists. I'm not creating anything. It's already there. The only variable is which version of the field my inner world is tuned to. That shift from creation to selection took an enormous amount of pressure off because I wasn't creating something, I wasn't building something, I wasn't changing something. I was finding something that was already created. I want to pause here for a moment because if this is landing, if this framework is giving you a more solid intellectual foundation for the work you've been doing, this is exactly the kind of deeper understanding I go into with my one-on-one clients. Because understanding parallel realities conceptually is one thing, identifying and shifting the specific subconscious blueprint that is currently determining which parallel reality you're inhabiting, that's the work that actually moves the needle. If you're ready for that, the link to book a free strategy call with me is in the description and in the pinned comment below. Now let's keep going because I want to address the thing that trips most people up with this framework. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. If the reality I want already exists, if it's just there in the fourth dimension waiting for me to navigate to it, then why isn't it showing up? I've shifted my assumptions, I've done the inner work, I've changed my beliefs. Why am I still in this version of reality? And this is the most important question you can ask, and the dimensional framework actually answers it. If your three-dimensional reality hasn't changed yet, the inner work isn't complete. The assumption hasn't genuinely moved at the root level. The root frequency, the deep subconscious blueprint, is still tuned to the old parallel reality. This isn't judgment, this is just mechanics. Your outer world is a precise readout of your inner tuning, which brings us back to the only work that actually matters, not trying to change the three-dimensional effect, but going to your inner world, your assumptions, your blueprint, your self-concept. This is where the navigation happens. This is the only place it can happen. So the next time someone asks you, where are all these infinite parallel realities? Now you have an answer. They're in the fourth dimension, the dimension that is to us what the third dimension is to the beings in Flatland, the dimension that coexists with every moment of our three-dimensional experience, the dimension we are embedded in right now that we interact with constantly, that we can't perceive with our three-dimensional senses, but that we can navigate through the only physical mechanism available to a three-dimensional being. Our consciousness, our inner state, our assumptions about who we are and what is available to us. The reality you want isn't coming. It isn't being built. It isn't on its way. It already exists right now in the fourth dimensional field that is coexisting with this very moment. Your only job is to change your tuning, to shift the inner dial at the root level in the subconscious blueprint, in the deeply held assumptions that have been selecting your current parallel reality until your consciousness is tuned to the version that already exists and already has everything you've been working toward. It's not wishful thinking, it is dimensional science. And the fact that you can't see the parallel realities, that's not evidence they don't exist. That's evidence you're a three-dimensional being with limited perception of this dimension. The being in Flatland couldn't see up, but up was always there. Drop in the comments, did this framework shift something for you? Did the dimensional model make parallel realities click in a way that hadn't before? Leave me a comment. Let me know if this makes it all click now so that you can use this powerful, framework for manifesting. And if you're ready to do the work to actually shift your inner tuning, to identify the subconscious blueprint that's been selecting your current reality and rewrite it at the root, you can book a free strategy call with me. The link is in the description and there's a link in the pinned comment. Thank you all so much for being here and watching this one. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll see you in the next video.